Let's look at the advantages of the oral transmission of the gospel during apostolic period. I remember talking about the characteristics of the oral tradition, that is oral way of transmitting the gospel by the word of mouth from one person to another, from house to house. It was the common tool by that time whereby the gospel was orally transmitted by the apostles of Jesus Christ. So today we are looking at what was the advantage of this method of oral preaching. One of the advantages of the oral preaching, it helped to solve the expensive writing materials which were rare by that time. So people could just concentrate on talking. And in this method of talking, they could talk to not only one person, but many people who would receive the message there and then. And it was the cheapest, because talking to a person does not call for fuel. And it calls for a person to get a chance of hearing by his or her own ears. Another advantage is it enabled one person to preach to many. Because one person could gather a lot of people, like 150, and you find that these people have come from different corners of the world. They are not coming from the same house, but different villages. And you find that this method could help them to transmit the gospel very fast. Since people who have come to listen to the message are taking different direction, and in the process of taking the different direction, these people could not keep the information for themselves. Instead, they could also become preachers, go and preach other people, also the family members, inclusive. More to that, since they had no storage or a method of keeping them, and the information was already in their heads, it helped them to avoid carrying bulky things like papers which they would have carried. But here the person just moved with his head or her head, started talking. So there was no need of carrying luggages that we are now moving, we are setting off, you know what? No, they could move with the information in their head. And it could be upon the preacher to ensure that if today I've talked about this one, tomorrow we'll talk about the other one, like that. It also helped them to have a free movement, most especially to the preachers. It is the same point from the previous one which I've discussed about. It also helped them to provide the first-hand information, because they have got a chance of seeing the eyewitness, the apostles who talked to Jesus, who shared a word with Jesus, who shook hand with Jesus. And these people could give the first-hand information, what they saw, what they observed, what they heard from Jesus himself. And because of the information being stored in their memories, it helped them to have sharp memories to ensure that not even a single message has been left out. And in addition to that, they were being inspired by the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit could also enable them to recall what Jesus talked about, how Jesus preached, how the miracle was performed. More to that, it also allowed them to have the variety of the presentation about Jesus, not to bore people, not to monopolize on a single kind of a word or a situation. They could ensure that they use a variety of information which they got from Jesus himself. In addition to that, it helped the preacher to exercise the spiritual gifts. As I told you, they were inspired by the Holy Spirit. This Holy Spirit enabled them to speak in tongues. Since Jesus told them on his ascension to heaven that I will not leave you alone, but I will send the Holy Spirit, which will be with you to ensure that you perform the duty very well. So the preachers, during this oral period, they were able to exercise the gifts of the Holy Spirit, interpreting the message to the believers, even prophesying. Because when they talk of prophesying, they are likely to tell what is likely to happen in the future, what is likely to occur at given time. So it could be predicted in the process. And also, the oral transmission also gave them a room to answer questions on the spot. You ask a question, I answer you there and then. And even go deeper to explain more to the person who have asked that particular question. Because sometimes it could call for vivid examples. Sometimes it could call for the situation to be narrated very well to the individual. More to that, it was a common method of preaching by them, and also Jesus himself did not put anything into writing. So when you find that the oral preaching, Jesus also used the oral preaching. He taught people, he befriended people, he welcomed everybody. And even after welcoming them, he could ensure at time he performs a miracle. So this kind of oral preaching, it helps because people are going to get the information directly. Sometimes the oral preaching, it makes the preaching to become interesting through use of the parables, through use of other examples to the listeners. It was also a flexible method because they could use other occasion in preaching the gospel. This is that's why I talked of the using of the parables, the narrating of the stories, connecting to the situation which was taking place within that period of time. Oral tradition also helped to cater for both the illiterate and the literate, the learned and those who never knew how to read and write. Because all of them could draw near to listen. They want to hear by their own ears, not to be told. What is this person saying? So it gives a big chance to unite all people together. All people would be at the same level. It could not segregate that this one knows how to read, this one doesn't know how to read. All people will be brought together and listen to the message at once. It also helped them to cater for the blind. For example, the old or the aged. I would categorize them under blind people. Then those one who had some disabilities of not seeing, but they could be able to hear, much as they are unable to write. So you find that this oral preaching was the best method because it could not segregate, it could not discriminate. Even the younger children would get access to the information. At least the person would be able to hear. I heard the person talking about this and this. Yes. More to that, the preachers came into contact with the persecuted Christians and also gave them comfort. Most especially those one who were tortured. So they came across them, they were able to talk to them, to strengthen their faith, to give them courage, to engage into prayers with them as a way of comforting that they shouldn't give up. Instead, they should preach more. They should ensure that the gospel should go ahead more. It allowed person-to-person contact, which gave no room for mob rejection. After converting, they could ensure that they go and visit these people again to find out whether they are still believing. So you find that this kind of preaching, after preaching, you make a follow-up to find out truly what I preached about. Are these people still following the message, or they have already given up? So those were the advantages of the oral transmission of the gospel during apostolic era.